Service is set to be tabled early next year. That's according to the SARS Commissioner Edward Kieswetter. He appeared in Parliament yesterday updating MPs on those recommendations from the Nugent Commission. Well, he joins me now in studio. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Commissioner.
Good evening.
So, talk to us firstly, I think, before we get into those reforms and the tightening of tax laws that we should all then start anticipating. The process of having to reform the revenue service, as it were, and bring back those structures which you've told us were broken and fractured, how's that process going?
It's a steady but slow process, Cathy. It's going to take persistent effort, hard work, and it'll take some time. You know, the main issue is to address the soft infrastructure, the culture, the values, and the internal confidence that we've spoken before. And of course, these things don't happen in serial progression. So there are a number of parallel work streams that are going. In addition to engaging with staff, rebuilding confidence, it's also about addressing some of the obvious issues raised in the Nugent report, some at leadership level, and just some at a technical and skills level. So I'm pleased to say that we are making steady progress. We are rebuilding a leadership team. For the while, I have extended the leadership team from a narrow, small team of chief officers, and I work directly with a broader leadership team. That's useful because it gives me direct access to them to learn, but also to influence. And then I've begun to reach out to specific individuals who I believe would be valuable to bring back into SARS, and I've had some positive responses in that regard. We'll make some announcements soon. And then also address some of the other hurt and trauma that is currently still prevalent in the organization.
Has enough been done to ensure that you will be able to meet your tax revenue collection targets for 2019?
So, as I said, there are multiple streams of work. One of those streams of work is to see what we can do immediately to begin to arrest the revenue decline. Now, the revenue is composed of three areas. The first is obviously the health of the economy, and we know that that's not working in our favor. We've had a good second quarter, but overall the year growth prospects are still low. And then we have, secondly, tax policy, which obviously affects the amount of revenue. But the main component that we administer is our compliance work, how effectively we do that. Now, it is also understandable that in that area we have fallen behind. The loss of skills, the loss of decline in confidence and trust, and just the overall decline in morale also means that we were not as focused in revenue collection as we have. So in that regard, in addition to just re-energizing our normal work streams, we've also identified a number of key revenue recovery projects. In fact, on Saturday, we are reinitiating the Davis Tax Committee that will do some work with us to identify the tax revenue gap, but to immediately operationalize some of those streams and to begin to have low-hanging fruit. We are giving a huge focus on outstanding debt that's not under dispute, as well as debt that is currently under dispute. And then a fourth area of work is also just taxpayers who have become non-compliant, who have not submitted returns. And then a last stream of work that we are focusing on in that regard is a huge focus on the illicit economy. There's significant abuse of VAT and customs fraud. And we're really redoubling our efforts to make sure that that work begins to deliver results.
So if I hear you correctly then, despite all of these interventions and mechanisms that you're putting in place, you're not necessarily expecting it to bear fruit to the extent that you will be able to meet the tax revenue targets for 2019?
I think we will definitely be under pressure to achieve the revenue objective. But we're not going to give up. But you're quite correct The rebuilding of SARS will be a long-term project. We've set for ourselves a Vision 2024. We have a clear strategic intent. We are now developing that plan, but that'll be a 5-year plan. But in the short term, in addition to restoring the confidence of our people, our employees, and building public confidence and trust, we have to also harvest some low-hanging fruits, and that's why we've identified 6 specific streams of work that will have short-term revenue impact.
Sure. One of the conversations we've been having here on News at Prime in recent weeks has been around the issue of illicit financial flows. And for the purpose of the conversation, particularly monies that are streaming in and out of the country through the sale of counterfeit goods. And many have told us that, in fact, part of why there is such a huge stream of counterfeit goods in the country is because SARS is failing at doing its jobs when it comes to customs control and managing what's coming in and out of the country. So perhaps I want to take advantage of having you here. As far as that issue is concerned, given the impact that we've had, because that's part of what contributes to part of the violence that we're seeing, at least from the conversations that we have with various groups, is that an issue that you're going to be trying to nip in the bud, and how do you foresee yourself being able to do that?
Absolutely. But it would be incorrect or incomplete to say SARS is failing. Naturally, if we had the resources to double up our number of customs officers and investigative capability, we'll have a higher impact. But even with the people we currently employ, we've had a significant, so we will report very shortly when we release our annual report, and you'll see that in the last year, we have been able to address a significant number of interventions, over 3,000 interventions that have produced significant revenue leakage opportunities. So an intervention would be anything from stopping things through the ports of entry, whether it's with travelers or goods that are imported into the country. But there's a significant area of deliberate fraud that we are focusing on. So for example, importers would bring in clothing and would deliberately declare a jacket that clearly should be in the order of 300, 400, 500 rand. They declare that for a few rand. Shirts for less than 10 rand. And so those are deliberate fraudulent declarations that we are focusing on, and we intervene and then also pursue those matters. One of the big areas of concern which we've raised with our counterparts is goods that we import, for example, from China. We have mutual information exchange agreements to work with the Chinese authorities. We have established a focused working group with the Minister of Trade and Industry together with ourselves. And so there's a number of initiatives that we will address to ensure that all of those loopholes are closed. In regards specifically to other areas of abuse, we have our own state-owned enterprises and private companies who apply to the Reserve Bank for prepayment of capital goods that are imported. Very often you need the money flow ahead of time to start the manufacturing. And they would declare an amount to allow funds to flow off, supposedly under a legitimate purchase order. And then we find that when those goods are actually delivered, the value of the goods that are declared is lower than the value of the money that has flowed out. So that can only be 2 reasons: either a false declaration of goods that are brought in, or a deliberate overestimation of monies that flows out. And that can be nothing other than money laundering and an illicit money flow. So we work with the Reserve Bank in terms of that. And then we find significant areas...
Just to take you back, and you're saying that it's SOEs that...
including state-owned enterprises.
Yes, that are part of this scheme, as it were, that ultimately is leading to illicit financial flows and money laundering.
So we have found examples across the board of an overstatement of monies that are flowing out, and then the goods that are declared as they come in do not necessarily match that. And so it's across the board, including public and private companies that are engaged in that. A part of the state capture project has unfortunately led to a decline in the governance processes that should guard the integrity of procurement. And we've seen intermediation from onshore and offshore partners who siphon off money without adding any real value.
Given the fact that there is a paper trail, and I'll speak more for the public sector because that's where the greatest accountability, where public resources is concerned, are you at a point where you would be able to bring those that have been responsible for this to book? Because surely these are incredible crimes that are being committed with taxpayers' money.
So we work with the Hawks, we work with the SIU, we work with the NDP, the NPA, and in fact, we have already in the past week signed a memorandum of understanding with both the SIU and the NPA, and will pursue with other agencies as well, in order to leverage our effort and our resources to ensure that we have appropriate exchange of information, each within our own mandate, and to bring those who have perpetrated these crimes against us to book.
All right. Well, after the break, then, we'll continue our conversation with SARS Commissioner Edward Kieswetter. We'll talk about what the tightening of legislation that he was putting before Parliament yesterday means for the revenue service going forward, and also what work they'll be doing to collect all of those